Good afternoon, and welcome to the League of American Orchestras webinar on post-pandemic engagement, how to reach out to NextGen in the digital age. My name is David Stiers. I'm the Director of Learning and Leadership Programs at the League. Thank you again for being with us and your peers to learn how our orchestras continue to meet the needs of their people. And we want to especially thank Easy Connect for their development and sponsorship of today's webinar. I also want to take a moment to share our appreciation for our digital learning funders, American Express, the Baisley Powell Alabash Fund, the Howard Gilman Foundation, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Our webinars are also supported in part by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council and New York State Council on the Arts with the support of the Office of the Governor and the New York State Legislature. A few quick technical notes about Zoom webinar. Feel free to introduce yourself and make comments in the chat, and be sure to address them to everyone, which is one of the options in the chat drop-down menu. And if you have questions for our speakers, please ask them in the Q&A box, and we'll be taking questions at the end. Also, everyone who's registered for today will receive an email with the recording, the PowerPoint slides, and transcript of this webinar very soon. And you can also find the closed captioning live transcript option through the icon in the Zoom toolbar. It's now my great pleasure to turn our proceedings over to our moderator, John Kieser, the Arts and Media Consultant and Director of Partnerships for IDAGIO GmbH, and the former Executive Producer of Media for the New World Symphony in Miami Beach. He will introduce our panelists, and I want to thank them all for being with us today to share their perspectives and expertise on audience engagements. So over to you, John, and thank you so much.
Thank you, David, and welcome, everybody. So I just said at IDAGIO, we firmly believe in the power of media, but we also do not discount that the live experience has some value. So the pandemic has changed our industry. A good percentage of our oldest and most loyal patrons are saying that they will not return to the concert hall. It is an opportunity to fill these seats with the U30 demographic. But besides taking a hard look at our programming and the audience experience, we need the right tools to connect with this group. In my 4+ decades of orchestra administration, it has been a constant and never answered question: how to bring in this audience. So let's see if we can learn from both sides of the Atlantic and from each other in this webinar. So that there is time for Q&A, I'm going to be a ruthless timekeeper and apologize in advance for any abrupt interruptions. Our first speaker is Jamie Alexander, who leads the JCA Arts Marketing team and works tirelessly to increase revenue, boost attendance, and grow patron engagement for their clients. JCA has also been doing important work around the patterns that have emerged during the pandemic and the place we are now. So Jamie, over to you.
Great, thank you so much, John. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. Before I dive into the trends from our 21-22 study, I just wanted to give you a quick introduction to JCA Arts Marketing. As John said, we're a boutique consulting firm that collaborates with cultural organizations across North America to help boost attendance, grow revenue, and grow patron engagement. And our approach is very data-driven. So we dive deep into our clients' data and use it to craft effective marketing strategies. So today I'm going to be sharing with you our study on reopening season sales trends. So we looked at sales trends from the 21-22 season and compared them to the previous season to understand how audience behavior has changed. And we used a software called the RMA to pull this data from 15 different US organizations of all different types, including theaters, orchestras, operas, dance companies, and performing arts centers. We collected our findings into a study, and I'll share the highlights with you today. First, perhaps unsurprisingly, we found that sales were down compared to before the pandemic. In 21-22, there were 14% less seats sold per performance, for a 17% decrease in percent capacity sold, and an 8% income loss per performance. So we wanted to understand what was driving this drop in sales. First, we found that while capacities were down throughout the full season, there's actually a steeper decline during the holiday season, December and January of 21-22, because of the Omicron variant. This is the complete opposite from what we saw during holiday seasons in previous years before the pandemic, since the holidays are usually when organizations sell the most tickets. We also found that organizations offered 68% as many performances in 21-22 as they did in previous years and brought in 62% as much ticket revenue. This indicates to us that fewer performances accounted for fewer sales, but we also found in our deeper dive that some organizations were over-programming since the drop in revenue and ticket sales was more severe than the drop in programming or performances. And next, we found that ticket sales were down across ticket types with, surprisingly, the exception of standard price tickets. So here on this chart, you'll see that by looking at the blue bars, that subscription tickets sold were down 32% per performance, discount tickets were down 21%, and comp tickets were down 22%. Of course, we're particularly worried about subscription sales being down because they're the core of our audiences, but we're also worried about discount sales being lower, as often discounts bring in people on the fringes who are on the fence about attendance. However, we were surprised to see that the standard price tickets sold remained the same as pre-pandemic. And we think this might be in part due to subscribers buying single tickets instead of subscribing. Finally, and perhaps most relevant to this webinar, is that we found that the drop in new bookers in 21-22 was more severe than the drop in retained bookers. This chart looks at the question of who is buying these tickets. Are they new buyers? Or are they people who have been to the organizations before? And here's what we're seeing. The height of these bars represent the total number of bookers each year. In blue are returning bookers, those who haven't attended in some earlier year. And in red are new bookers. There's a pretty clear drop in both in 2021. And what we see is returning bookers dropped by 29%, while new bookers dropped by 33%. So both dropped significantly compared to the earlier years, but new bookers dropped more. So this indicates to us that it's paramount to place enhanced focus on new audience acquisition. And we need to be thorough about not only who you want to have in our audiences, but also consider why they would choose to be in our audience, what motivates their attendance. And this will help us to create marketing campaigns that are more effective and efficient in bringing in the audience of the future. If you want to read the full study, we have many other findings, and you can scan this QR code with your phone to access the study. I'll leave it up for just a couple seconds, but we're also going to be sharing this PowerPoint with you so you can scan it later as well. All right, so I think I'll pass it back to you, John.
Well, thank you, Jamie. I think the best thing, oh, okay, there goes that. Oh. So you'll get the presentation later for the QR code. Our next speakers, Sophie Garzon-Lapierre, who's head of business development and marketing at EasyConnect, has now spent 4 years developing audience engagement expansion platforms. She will team up with Kerstin, Glasow, director of marketing and sales for the Berlin Philharmonic. They will take us through a case study that tackles head-on the issues that we've been doing our best to conquer. So over to you, Jamie and Kerstin.
Thank you, John. And thank you, Jamie, for the interesting insights. Maybe, Jamie, if it be possible to share your screen again so we can click through the presentation, that would be great. Otherwise, I try to share my screen. I don't know what works best for you, Jamie.
There you go.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, as you might have guessed, the situation in Europe is pretty much the same as in the US, and the numbers Jamie shared, we know them here as well. But I want to give you today some examples from Austria and Germany, because some leading institutions use the challenging situation after the pandemic as an opportunity to reach out to next-gen generations. They digitized their youth programs and tried to fill their empty seats with young and new people, and it worked. So maybe if you could click, now it works, perfect. Thank you. And the next one, please. Perfect. So let's start with Austria. The Vienna State Opera and the Salzburg Festival digitalized their under 27 program with an automated ID and age verification through the overall cultural ticket Gretchen app in Austria. And they opened their sales from last minute at the box office to ticket purchase a few days in advance. And as you can see, within the past 2 years, there were a significant increase in new young audiences, tickets, and also turnover. And I want to highlight some key successes and give you some inspiring numbers and insights, because the sweet spot for young people to purchase their tickets is 10 to 15 days before the show, which means if we only have just last minute offers, there's a huge unused ticket sales potential, which could be perfectly used when you do it in advance. Also, young people are a perfect sales force because on average, they bring 1.5 new people to the venues, with most active users bringing up to 50 new ticket buyers who weren't in the ticketing systems before. And the third one, like if you have a digital convenience and innovative content presentation, the increase of the conversion goes up to 74%. And that's why, and this leads me to our next example, we focused especially on social and community features, as well as an innovative and compelling content presentation in our second example from Berlin, the Classic Card Berlin. The Classic Card is a membership program for everyone under 30 years with highly discounted tickets for leading cultural institutions like the Berlin Philharmonic, also the Concert Hall Berlin, the main operas and orchestras. And it was until May 2022 only an analog card where you can get your discounted tickets only at the box office and last minute. And the membership already exists since over 15 years. But in the past 2 years, 2 problems have emerged. One, the numbers, there were a big loss of members. And secondly, the institutions had no data. So after the pandemic, the institution said, okay, let's rethink the whole project and go 100% digital. And together we have digitalized the membership and also incorporated some social and community features to attract especially young and new audiences. And now I'm going to show you a video, and I start my screen sharing so that you get an idea what it's all about. I hope you can see my screen now. So this is the front page where you have all the upcoming events of the different institutions. You can register your membership directly in the app. You have different categories and can also recommend the app to a friend. And as I mentioned before, with the digitalized age verification, you can make a photo from your ID card or passport or whatsoever. And there's a background fraud check. And when everything's set, you're ready to book your discounted tickets. So everything is automated and the institutions receive all the customer data. You have here your profile settings. We can upload a profile picture, and this is the community feature where you can add your friends to the app, and then you can also share wish lists and book together and make the whole ticket purchase to a social event and also your cultural experience to a social event. And then we focused a lot on a compelling content presentation with photos, videos, a short description. We added audio samples to give a better insight what it's all about. And then the people can choose their seats directly in the seating map. It's via a live interface connected to the ticketing system, so you have all the available offer. And because I'm already registered in the app, I see my discounted tickets and can also book for a companion who is also under 30, or also a full price ticket for my parents or grandparents or whatsoever. And the good thing for the institutions is that they receive all customer data from myself, but also from my companion, because it's rewritten back in the ticketing system. And this is the best base for audience development. And yeah, now I hand over to Kerstin from Berlin Philharmonic, who is also participating in the Classic Card app for more details and insights.
Thanks so much, Sophie. Wonderful. So I would like to give you an insight into why we as Berlin Phil joined the Classic Card and how we're finding it so far. Jamie, could I ask you to go to the next slide, please? So the Berliner Philharmoniker have been around since 1882, and what you see here is the Philharmonie, which is right in the center of Berlin, our concert hall, which consists essentially of two halls. To the right, you see the main auditorium with 2,400 seats, and on the left-hand side, you see probably the largest chamber music hall ever with 1,200 seats. So these are the capacities we have to fill on a regular basis. We organize 160 concerts per season ourselves. 110 of those are symphony concerts by the Berlin Phil, and 50 other concerts focus around chamber music. They are recitals, jazz concerts, or world music presentations. But we also, of course, have festivals, open house days, or educational activities. Next slide, please. Jamie, could you go to, yeah, wonderful. So I want to give you a bit of background, how we became part of the Classic Card group. So about almost 20 years ago, we were actually co-founders of the Classic Card. So we were actually part of the original group of people who came up with the idea. However, we had a huge problem because tickets were only sold on the evening of the actual concert at the box office. And what happened with the Berlin Phil is we tended to be sold out already. So we felt we had nothing to offer to young people after all through the Classic Card. So what happened then is that we actually dropped out and we created our own under 29 scheme. Next slide, please. So we started our own ticketing scheme quite successfully, actually without much effort. However, what we found is that we always attracted the same type of people, and we didn't really develop that audience segment strategically, pretty much for two main reasons. First of all, on our own, we didn't have enough resources for special campaigns and activities, for example, targeting students at Freshers' Weeks, etc. And the second probably was actually an internal one, that actually anyone who came with a discounted ticket was actually seen as, seen as a loss of income by our finance director. So we weren't encouraged to kind of reserve a lot of tickets for discounted patrons. But I was really thrilled then when a couple of years ago, actually shortly after I'd started working at the Berlin Phil, was approached by the Classic Card group asking whether we'd be happy to join. Next slide, please. Because I was really excited when I was told that the concept was about to change completely of the Classic Card. So instead of just focusing on box office sales of the evening of the concert, there were plans of advanced booking and of actually completely digitizing the offer by going completely app-based. And that there was the idea of an actual joint marketing budget that all partners contributed to. So my hope was when we joined that we could really together make a difference and target young people in Berlin more efficiently and convincingly. First of all, by sharing our resources, the money, but also, you know, the kind of the manpower that we put in, and that together we would actually have something much stronger to offer. Because what we find in Berlin is that lots of young people arrive new to the city, so they don't have necessarily a loyalty attached to a specific organization. They're just really keen and curious and adventurous, trying to get to know the city and its institution. And through the classical card, we really offer the best of classical music that Berlin has to offer. All of the big opera houses, all of the big orchestras, and the 2 big concert halls. So we really felt we had a really, really strong offer. And now, especially 2.5 years after COVID, I feel that pooling our resources and our exciting offers and our creativity makes so much sense to all of us. Next slide, please. So our experience so far, of course, we are just at the beginning of our journey because we only launched the proper version of the Classic Card app in September with the season start. And the actual campaign is about to start next week. So it's early days. But what we can already say is that already since the beginning of August, we've sold more than 4,000 new Classic Cards. And we haven't only, we have for every single concert that we are hosting, we have sold up to 100 tickets without any special promotion yet. What we are also finding is even now that people tend to bring along fully paying patrons, or they bring along new friends, under 30 people who are still paying the additional fee, who are not members of the Classic Card yet, but who through the Classic Card and accompanying Classic Card member have the chance to get to know our different offers and our different institutions. So I'm really excited about what's to come next, and we have lots of additional plans for the future, including other organizations, maybe even theaters, cinemas, festivals. So there's lots to do. And I really feel that together we can make a real difference by together targeting a new audience segments that we so far have all found very difficult to target. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kerstin, and thank you, Sophie, for that presentation. Now, finally, we have our last panelist to talk, David Taylor, who's an arts entrepreneur, a consultant, a coach, and an author. And actually his recent book, The Future of Classical Music, Part 1, is a terrific compendium of learning from the pandemic and should be in everyone's library. I'll just say that. So, David, please give us some thoughts or your observations and some of your experience as well of engaging with this audience. So take it away. The last 8 minutes of the presentation are yours, sir.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you for everyone for joining. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. So as we've already heard today, we are seeing a drop in audiences all across the world in the classical music industry. This drop in audiences, though, isn't COVID related as we may have initially expected, and we now know this due to some incredible research from organisations like the League of American Orchestras and their report and the Audience Outlook Monitor, but also from comparing ourselves to other industries as well. The world of sports has bounced back, and also other industries in the entertainment world have as well. Here in the UK, the 21-22 Premier League Soccer League live attendance set new records for in-person attendance. If COVID was such an issue for audiences and consumer behaviour, they would be equally as affected by it. So ultimately, why are the reasons why we are all of a sudden seeing this drop in audiences? For me, although there are nuances as to why each individual and different groups in different areas will be making their decisions, it comes down to 2 different things. What we are seeing are the consequences of both outdated and ineffective marketing, and also an unevolved product that doesn't provide value for time. To survive, we must be realistic about the world that we now live in, recognize that it has changed, and that ultimately we have to change with the world. So first, I'd like to look at marketing before moving on to our concert product to see what we can do with that. Ultimately, we're living through what is probably the biggest period of change in how we connect and communicate as a civilization and as a species since the creation of the printing press in the 15th century. If we look back at that time historically, we saw radical change with new boundaries being drawn between nations, wars forged, and new understandings of gods and the way the world worked. That huge significant change radically changed how those societies interact with each other and how their future carried on. Likewise, with the internet and also the social media change, we're seeing a huge significant change in how we interact and engage with each other on a global scale. No longer are we beholden to gatekeepers and media organizations when we're able to pull out our phones, write something on there, and potentially get a response from the President of the United States who happens to be tweeting back to us. This is incredibly radical, and as a civilization, we don't really recognize just how transformational that is that we're living through. So for us in the classical music world, despite this incredible, powerful change that it means that we now have new ways of doing things and engaging as a society, we haven't changed our approach to marketing. Ultimately, we're still trying to do our 20th century approach within a 21st century marketplace. When it comes to the world of social media, we're largely using it to list events and ask people to buy tickets or give us donations. Kind of like why people go to watch television isn't to watch the adverts. People equally don't want to go on social media to consume adverts. They ultimately go on it for media that is social. In addition, when it comes to the social media world, we also fail to adhere to best practice on these platforms, making what can be described at times as rookie mistakes. My own personal pet peeve is seeing large multi-million-dollar arts organizations regularly post landscape photos on Instagram, despite the fact that portrait photos have been the best practice on there since 2015. It's a mistake that we wouldn't make in print formats, and yet time and time again, we see it within our industry on a global scale. What we should be doing on the marketing front is meeting people where they're at and creating content that is of value to them in a way that is of the nuance of the platform that we're meeting them in. We should be creating content that provides people of value, building relationships with those audience members and using those audience relationships to further our cause. Ultimately, we can really complex and over calculate what we do on social media, but ultimately it is just media that is social. Ultimately, we need to change our approach in order to survive, looking at best practice from other industries in order to thrive going forward and meet people where they are at. This leads me on to the concert experience. Ultimately, our main core product of live entertainment isn't something that's really evolved over the last 20, 30, 40 decades. Over all that period, the main change we've seen are electric lights, potentially further additions to amplified sound, maybe concert programs, and maybe pre-concert talks. We haven't seen the radical change that we have done in sports like the NFL, in soccer, and other entertainment industries that have radically changed what those experiences are like in person. What we have failed to recognize is that we are no longer trying to attract value for money. We are ultimately competing for value for time. In essence, money isn't really an issue for us going forward, even though we are living through a cost of living crisis. Many people still make purchasing decisions that are either on luxury goods or for personal entertainment. Looking in the UK, the usual discounted concert ticket price for under 30s is about £5. In London, there's so much more you can do with £5, or you can do this more expensive than £5. A cheap pint of beer in what is a chain pub is £5.10. A medium McDonald's meal is £5.30. The cinema is £10. Crazy golf is £15. A medium pizza at Domino's takeaway is £17. And a Premier League soccer match is £80. So ultimately, why are they able to charge more when we are unable to get people with cheaper tickets? That is primarily because we are now competing for this value for time. One of my passions outside of the music world is the sport of rugby. And when I've been to see England play at the National Stadium, which is 80,000 seats, they have multiple levels of experience to provide value for time. Outside of the stadium, there is a compound that you enter, providing a tertiary, a third level ring of experiences. Within this outer complex, we have junior rugby being coached by ex-internationals. There are champagne tents, there's live music, there are skill tests for you to try your hand at, all before you even go into the stadium itself. Then when you enter the stadium, there is a secondary ring of experience to provide value for time, whether that is more food and drink, there are fireworks, there are dancers, there's also then live social media engagement going around on big screens, providing further value for time. But ultimately, those 80,000 people go to see a primary performance of world-class performers on a stage. They are there for the main core product, but ultimately those additional experiences provide value for time, and results mean that people will spend over £100 per ticket, rather than go see an orchestra which provides just one sole piece of experience. One thing to recognize is that adding these extra levels of experiences doesn't diminish from the arts. We are able to provide things that are of additional value that mean that those evenings that we have for experiences are of great value. We've only slightly touched on that with pre-concert talks, but there's a whole other world to be explored, whether it's educational opportunities, additional food and drink, access to our incredible, passionate musicians who are of great fascination to our audiences, and so much that we can do with that. Going forwards, if you want to attract both the under 30 demographic and also the over 30 demographic who also have this same consumer behavior, we need to do more around both the way we connect to them and how we provide value for time going forwards. In essence, the world has changed, and so must we. So I'd now like to hand back to John, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, David. Well done. You made it just right on schedule. Perfect. Just like the trains in Switzerland. So I'm going to actually ask David to help with the Q&A. I've been looking at some of these, and I think I can help also in farming out who might be the best person to answer that question.
Great. Thank you all for sending in your questions on the Q&A, and please continue to do that. And we have several questions that are very technical about the classic card. So why don't we start with some of those, and then I'll let whomever would like to answer them from your perspectives. But we'll just start with, give a little bit more background about who developed the classic card.
Yeah, maybe that's a question for me. We developed Classic Card at Easy Connect together with the Classic Card team and the participating institutions. And maybe to just give a quick background, the Classic Card is just the name of the membership. So the Classic Card app, because I see it here, is another question. This is for the region of Berlin, for the membership of Berlin, but you could also have such an app for a single institution, and then it would be in the name of the institution or of the program and so on.
So the classic card can be both for a region or for an individual organization as well.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
And is the classic card for both live experiences and digital, or one or the other?
It is primarily for live experiences, and that you can book your tickets for in-hall events, but you could also add some digital offers like a media library or podcasts, videos, etc. But yeah, you could also purchase tickets for digital events, but primarily the classic card is just for live events.
Okay, for live events. And is it also accessible via a computer browser for anybody who doesn't have a smartphone?
No, it's app only. Yeah, so mobile and app only.
So I mean, we have a website, but that directs to the app, so you can only buy through the app.
Yeah. And does the classic card connect to Tessitura?
Yeah, the technique is connected to different ticketing systems. It could also be connected to Tessitura because the technology, the USP of the technology is that there are live interfaces to different ticketing systems. By the classic card, and in Berlin we don't have Tessitura, we have other ticketing systems, but it would be also possible for Tessitura.
Great. And so let's get into some more philosophical, big picture questions. So how have you, in launching it, been able to promote the classic card? What has been your marketing scheme to attract new members?
So that's probably a question for me because we're leading on the campaign. So as I said, we're just launching the actual big campaign next week, and it's mainly digital, what we're doing to reach out to people. It's of course through all organizations channels. For example, because we had our under 30s ticketing scheme before, of course, we've now interacted with our audiences who previously bought our tickets, offering them the classic card for the first year at a discounted price. Plus, we are also doing something at the Freshers Fair here in Berlin, where kind of all new students come in. So several activities and stalls and fairs that we're participating in. So it's a mix of everything, really.
Great. And although I think a lot of people love the idea of the cross-institutional membership model, have you had any resistance in launching a joint marketing effort?
Not really. No, I mean, of course, it requires more time, to be fair. I mean, if I were planning a campaign just on my own, of course, then we just make the decision internally. Whereas, of course, we had to go through far more meetings and discussions. But everyone really has the job now. Every organization has responsibility for a bit of the communications plan. And then we get together regularly to decide on the next steps and budgets, et cetera, et cetera.
And in thinking about the under 30 members, what are your strategies to retain them once they age out of the program? Or is the program maybe too new to analyze this? Because again, if people buy deeply discounted tickets when they're younger, will they actually pay full price when they're over 30? How have you thought about managing this issue?
Well, first of all, we have a really clever kind of way how we price the membership fee. So there's no fixed price, but you pay depending on your age. And if you stay a member, for example, if you join at the age of 16 and you stay a member until you're 29, you still only pay 16 euros per year as membership fee. So that is, again, to encourage people to stay on and not drop off for a year and et cetera, et cetera. But that's kind of now on our to-do list to think about retaining. How do we retain people who are getting older than 30?
Yeah, and at Easy Connect, we are also working on new membership models for after or over 30-year-olds, like flat rate models, as you know it from Netflix and co. So where you have those subscription models which are more flexible than the usual subscriptions, and maybe so this could also work pretty well for young professionals and so on. So yeah, we're hoping to implement it soon.
Great.
We've also been, sorry.
No, please.
I was going to say, we've also been working on a pricing concept called radical pricing, which is essentially giving people the ability to pay what they can for a ticket. And so sometimes that helps to combat the fear of people undervaluing tickets, because you can do things like offer a pay it forward price, where people are paying more than the regular ticket price to enable things like under 30 programs or subsidize other cheaper tickets. So that's a way, as people age out, to give them the opportunity to pay more and make it feel philanthropic also.
Right. And actually, that works in digital too. Speaking from our experience at IDAGIO, we instituted about a year ago something called flex pricing, and there are several different tiers that people can pay. And before we instituted the flex pricing, we found that the average ticket price, say, was basically 10 euros, 10 pounds, $10, because that's the stated price. People paid it. But as soon as we did flex pricing, what happened was very soon the average ticket price doubled. That people understood that there was real value in what they were seeing, and that they would basically said, okay, I'm willing to support the arts, and they paid more. So some people paid less, but more more people paid more. So something of interest.
Absolutely. And do you offer, beyond the low ticket prices, any other member benefits such as free or discounted food or drink?
No, we don't do that.
And so is the Classic Card app now available to be adapted by other orchestras or organizations?
Yes, it is. As I said before, it then would be on the name of the institution or organization, also in the CI and CD of the institution. And yeah, it's adaptable for all kind of orchestras and cultural organizations.
Great, wonderful. And Sophie, if you want to put in the chat how people could follow up if they wanted more information about Classic Card.
Sure.
Because I now have some more global questions that I would love to ask, and particularly David Taylor, your very thoughtful perspective. What are other ideas that you're seeing of adding value to an orchestra program, particularly thinking about using lighter or pops programs to attract younger audiences, or adding multimedia? Anything else you're particularly doing to attract the under 30 beyond just the Classic Card low ticket prices?
Yes, I think this is one of the really exciting areas where imagination can run wild. So for example, very simple things, instead of discounting prices, you can keep the price the same and add things on top. So for example, if you have a $15 ticket, instead of making it $5, you can potentially make it into an added drink, which will probably be something cheaper on top, fingers crossed. Then from there's also experimental things you can do, like having P-Bone experimental instrument areas to come and try, young professional networking events, speed dating, additional things that are very much outside the concert, but it adds to the event and also helps build a community as part of that as well. From that, I think also looking at Instagram traps and what art museums in particular have done around that is really fascinating. They've had some real strong ways of increasing memberships through using that as a program. There's a very, very good video by Vox on YouTube about art museums and Instagram traps that I think will be a real fascination. And that's something that you can do outside the concert hall. Those can be installations that are in the foyer, outside the hall itself. So there's plenty around there that you can do. But oh, and then very much access to musicians, particularly the under 30 demographics, always have lots of questions and huge curiosity. So any opportunities to break down barriers, have conversations around there, I think is something very fascinating to do.
Yeah, I would say it's not just a U30, the connection with musicians, because at New World Symphony is a policy there that they actually have the fellows come to the lobby after every performance. It's done in a situation where a number of fellows do it per night, so it's not the entire orchestra, but part of the string section or part of the wind section, etc., will go out there and talk to the audience. So that has had, I think, probably the greatest effect. Also, if you have members, one other possibility, and what we've also done at New World from time to time, is have the actual musicians phone a member and say, thank you for your membership. So, I mean, I could have done that and it would have been, yes, okay, fine, very much, and hang up the phone or whatever. But when it comes from a member of the orchestra, it has an amazing, powerful effect. And it also, we found, increases loyalty.
Great. And if we were able to figure out in-venue augmented experiences, do you think this would help attract the U30 segment more?
For me, I think it's part of a bigger ecosystem of attracting them. So I don't think it would be a huge decision maker, but part of a bigger environment and culture that would support that is really positive. In the past, I've been a part of projects that have run live hashtag engagement during performances, encouraging people to share their thoughts and photos on a screen on a hashtag that is played at the interval and at the end of the concert, but they're able to use their phones during the concert itself. Equally, things like digital concert program apps, but ones that are in sync with the music, are incredibly powerful at helping demystify some of the things for those who are first-time concert attendees, which are also really fascinating. So I think those sort of things are certainly going to be things that add to the experience, and anything that adds is going to be of huge value of increasing the arguments to why they should click by and leave the house and come see some incredible music.
And have you found any programming that's of particular interest to the U30? Is it the more traditional? Is it the more modern? Is it programming connected to community social issues? How much is the programming influencing who you see take advantage of these U30 offers?
So more than happy to go for that one again. So with that, I think programming is certainly something that's important, but the under 30 demographic are more likely to take risks than those in the above 30 demographic. In the UK, one of our terms is experience seekers for that demographic. So they are going out of their way to try things that are new. So with that, that's certainly something that is a positive for trying things, but equally those things that people know, such as film music and gaming music in particular, are hugely beneficial. So I think anything that potentially can blend those when we're used to having standalone film or gaming concerts, maybe finding ways of curating things around sound worlds like people do with media playlists and Spotify could be an interesting way of bringing those audiences into from, say, for example, Final Fantasy or Halo or Call of Duty that they know into something else as well.
If I may add to that, I've done visitor research both in Germany and in Austria, and we found that especially the U30 audiences, they were actually more traditional than we ever thought possible. So they were the ones, if they were to go to a classical concert, they wanted the full-on symphony orchestra, they wanted like hardcore classical music, or maybe a piano recital or something, which also surprised us because we were always just looking for something new and exciting. But the ones that actually really chose to come to see classical music, they wanted like real classical music.
I would just also, Sophie, could you talk about the experience with the opera that wasn't selling in Austria? I think this is actually something, because it talks to preparing the audience or giving some background information.
So maybe if you can remember, I showed that before in the Classic Art video, you had this audio sample, and we added these because we made the experience in Austria. We were selling tickets for an opera, Magic Flute from Mozart, and the other one was Don Pasquale from Donizetti, and Magic Flute was selling very, very well. But Don Pasquale wasn't selling at all. And so we were thinking, okay, we have to boost a little bit the ticket sales. What can we do? And so we added this audio sample. We also have a cooperation with IDAGIO. So it was an IDAGIO audio sample, but only for 30 seconds, very, very short. And then suddenly the ticket sales increased. And we were wondering, okay, is it really just because of the audio sample? And then we made a little survey among the buyers, and they said, yeah, well, we didn't know what Donizetti, what Don Pasquale was all about, but then we heard the audio and thought it was easy listening and it could be a very nice evening, and then we just buy the tickets. And so as I said before, I think the more compelling the content presentation is, and the more videos and photos you present, it's easier also for like cultural newbies to get an idea what it's all about, and I think that helps a lot, and also increases the conversion rate.
Great. And we know that social media is a major way that people are learning about concerts and performances. Are there any specific examples of effective social media posts or best practices that you would want to make sure the audience on our webinar today are aware of if they're not already?
Certainly. So the Royal Opera House in particular is very good at having showcasing their young tickets offer through Instagram and encouraging people to have user-generated content. The Orchestra of the Age of Enlightenment introducing series, where they introduce a different Baroque instruments in videos, has been incredibly powerful, and also something that has been very cheap for them to create. They're also very small organizations, so it's interesting seeing how a smaller size organization can be very successful in the digital space. The London Philharmonic Orchestra in particular has been very successful with some of their social media focused content and has been experimenting with TikTok. So on the UK side, those are three quite different ones that may be worth having a look at just to see. In terms of best practice, I think it would be particularly just making sure that organizations are aware of the correct aspect ratios for each individual platform, whether hashtags are of use or hindrance on different platforms in particular. The good news is that we live in a wonderful world where Google exists, so someone will already have written a blog on how these things work and what the best practice is. So you should be able to find out lots of nice cheat sheets and things for free, regardless of what size of organization you come from. There'll be hopefully something that is of help and value to you.
Great. Thank you, David. And then a question about what are the overall sales numbers or trends that you're seeing when focusing on heavily discounted tickets as compared to trying to market regular price tickets? So are you still meeting your targeted sales goals with the heavily discounted tickets as well?
Maybe that's a question for me. Well, first of all, it's not either or. Of course, we're not purely focusing on classic card tickets. I mean, that's an aside, essentially, in the greater scheme of our kind of marketing strategies. And for us, it's an investment into the future because we're seeing those audiences as fully paying members of the future. So we don't really see it as a loss. At the same time, of course, we only have a certain amount of tickets available per performance that we would give away at a discounted price. So there's a limit essentially to the, if you want to perceive it as a loss of income.
Yeah, maybe I can add something to that because it's, as you said, it's just a limited number of tickets and it's based on capacity usage rules. So, for example, if you have, I don't know, 20 tickets left in your performance, you then can use them as discounted tickets for the Classic Card membership. So yeah, it's based on capacity, and it's an automated algorithm, so you don't have every tickets on discounts, just an amount of tickets.
Great, thank you. And one thing I know the League is working on is how do we get better demographic information on our audiences? I wondered if you have a sense of the average age of your audiences. Or the percentage of U30 who are attending these concerts.
U30, we of course know because we asked them to show proof, where the other audience, I mean, it's voluntarily whether they tell us their age. So we only essentially know through visitor research the exact numbers. And of course, because we have so many different series, of course, it also depends whether it's a world concert or a festival or our symphony concerts.
Do you have an idea of your U30 numbers or percentage?
Not right now because of COVID kind of screwed everything up pretty much. And since we've just started with the classic part, it's really hard to tell at the moment.
And do you see this as a baseline season, or do you already have goals of how much U30 you want to increase by even in this first season?
Yeah, of course, we have sales targets for how many classic cards we want to sell in the first year and how many tickets and how many income we want to generate through the classic card in the first year. And then we have growth target for the following years, because that was, of course, what was agreed beforehand. And also, otherwise, I don't think my finance director would have given me any budget had I not shown him or kind of anticipated how much it would bring in eventually.
And I just wanted to point out, oh, sorry, from
No, please, Jamie.
Some work that we've done with organizations, we found that, of course, the millennial or the under 30 segment is really important to cultivate, but we're also finding that in terms of defining next gen audiences, they also include aging millennials, people in their 30s, and Gen X, because those generations have also decreased in their audience, in their attendance since the pandemic, and are experiencing a lot of the same things as millennials are, with so much competition for their time and really being focused on digital and all of that. So I think it's interesting to think of next gen not as, just U30, but U50 really.
And Jamie, as you listen to these remarks and their successes across the pond, what seems similar and what may be different vis-a-vis activities in the United States?
I think a lot of the trends in terms of audience behavior sound very familiar, that we saw, that I shared some of them with the study. I also think that the focus on making sure that we're providing accessible ticket prices for all different types of segments sounds exactly what we should be doing in order to create inclusivity in our halls. And I'm really interested in this idea, as was mentioned in the chat, and as we discussed, of a membership that operates like a Netflix model and also is cross-organizational. So I think it's really exciting that, Easy Connect is providing a really easy platform to do that, because I've heard a lot of interest in that in the United States.
Great. In our final 5-6 minutes, any final words that you would like to share, anything that hasn't come up yet or you want to reemphasize from our discussion this afternoon?
From my side, I think it's that we need to really revisit the idea of new ways of doing things and new thinking, and that very understandably, we've been in almost a rut of how we've done things in the past, and now's the time to be brave and start experimenting with new ways of thinking and doing things. So whether it's technologies like this or other approaches, I think there's lots of potential. And ultimately, we have an incredible product that is still resonating in the digital space. So and also in live performances. So I think it's really exciting that we can keep hopefully finding new ways of thriving.
I think there was a question earlier about, was there resistance to establishing cross-organizational platforms? And there may be. However, I know from experience, I have 3 kids who are U30 or close to U30, and they don't think in terms of, oh, I'm going to be really focused on Cleveland Orchestra, and that's all I'm going to go see. They will go and they want to sort of feast all these various experiences from either museums or from ballet, opera, etc. They're less organization specific consumers. So what makes great sense about this system is that it does have all these organizations together. And so you'll find that these people will be sort of forming taste communities within themselves to say, oh, we're going to go to opera one night, we're going to go to the ballet another night, etc. And so to me, that's one of the strengths of trying to make the effort, and it is, I understand, a lot more effort to try and bring together organizations under one umbrella.
Great, thank you, John. Sophie, Jamie, Kirsten, any final thoughts?
Maybe just adding on to John, I think for me, especially now, is really the unique opportunity to really kind of find your group that you want to work with, where you align your goals, your values align. And because I really feel that together we're stronger. You just need to find the right organizations, the right people to work with, because I think now really is the time to join up, join forces and think further, be innovative. And I think you can take more risks if you're a bigger group. And also what we found, it was far easier to get funding for all of us because we got some state funding to build the app. And I think none of us could have done that on our own. So I think for me, it's a plea to join together, join forces, and make the most of it.
Great.
Yeah, Kerstin, that's a very good point in that foundations really like to see when organizations work together as opposed to being in their own silos.
Sophie, Jamie, final comments?
Yeah, I just want to add to Kerstin that I think now is also a great opportunity to try new things because there are so many different and new ways we could implement now, and yeah, and just try things out and see if they work, because everything's different after the pandemic, and I think this is a good time to set new goals and go new ways.
Yeah, and I think I just want to emphasize that the importance of research as you determine what new audience you want, just doing your research to make sure you understand what they want from you and what motivates their attendance, and then following them to work on the initiatives that will bring you the audience you want.
Great. Well, thank you, Jamie, Sophie, John, Kirsten, and David, for really sharing such thoughtful insights of new ways of expanding into audiences and connecting with the U30 groups and utilizing technology, social media, and other ways to get us out of any traditional status quos we've been in, to really think about how we do increase the reach of our performances. And so we really appreciate the time and effort for you putting together and framing this presentation, for Easy Connect for providing it to us today. Before we depart, though, I'd like to remind everyone that if you registered for today, you will be receiving an email with recording, PowerPoint slides, and transcript of this webinar later this week. And we would also appreciate your completing the evaluation form, the link of which you'll see when you exit. And we would look forward to seeing you next month for our webinar in November. It will be on Tuesday, November 15th, and we'll be looking at the topic of employees and attracting, retaining, and engaging top talent for your staff. So please join us then. Thank you again for joining us today, and please let the League know however we can be of assistance. And a big virtual round of applause for our wonderful panelists today. Hope everyone have a great rest of the week. Thank you so much.